In our class today, we're going to talk about numerous animals, and they may be either quite familiar to you or rather exotic. All of the animals today are classified as mammals, which, if you remember from our first lesson on mammals, these are warm-blooded creatures, meaning they create their own body heat. They have hair or fur on their bodies, and the mothers nurse their young with milk. Almost all mammals give birth to live babies, but we'll talk about one special mammal today that doesn't. I hope you're excited for this class, because over the next few minutes, we will travel the globe together and discuss some incredible wonders of creation. We will learn about a mammal that inhabits the forested regions of most continents, and then consider a special animal only found on one continent. We'll consider the life of one desert mammal and then go underground to study the only true flying mammal. So let's get started. Our first wonder of creation lives in some of the driest and harshest desert climates. Where the winds blow fierce and the water is scarce, you will find camels plodding along like nothing is wrong. What are the features that make a camel so adept at thriving where few creatures can? Eric Lyons will help unpack this humpbacked creature and demonstrate some sophisticated design elements that confound evolutionary thinking.
Camels may live in some of the hottest places on Earth, but they are some of the coolest and comical creatures that God created. Just one look at their skinny legs, knobby knees, wide feet, humped back, long neck, stretched face, bushy eyebrows, and big floppy lips, and you can't help but chuckle. Just be careful not to laugh at a camel too long. You might irritate him, and if you bother him too much, he might just bite, kick, or even spit at you. Well, it's not really saliva. Camels actually burp up partly digested food called cud and spray their agitators by flinging the greenish gunk from their floppy lips. You may not have to worry about this with well-trained camels, but if you agitate a crabby camel, watch out. Some camels have two humps and live mostly in Central Asia. The most common camel, however, is the one-hump Arabian camel. Have you ever heard that a camel can go long periods of time without drinking because he stores large amounts of water in his hump? It's true that a camel can go long periods of time, days or even months, without drinking water, but it doesn't store water in its hump. God made a camel with the ability to store fat in its hump. A healthy, well-fed camel can have a hump that weighs as much as 80 pounds. When a camel goes on a long journey, often carrying people or supplies, and food becomes scarce, he relies on stored fat for energy. The longer a camel goes without eating, the more stored fat he uses. At the same time, the hump gets smaller and smaller and often begins to hang off to one side. Later, when the camel is able to get his fill of food again, his hump begins to fill out and goes back to normal. How is it that a camel can go days or even months without a drink of water? What have scientists learned about the amazing design of this water-conserving creature? First, a camel can get a large amount of the water his body needs from the plants that he eats. This is especially true in the wintertime when plants hold more moisture than in the summer months. A camel can even get water from eating cacti without hurting his mouth. Can you imagine eating a cactus? A camel can consume such a prickly plant because of the very tough lining in its mouth, so tough that the thorns of a cactus can't break through the skin. Second, unlike most animals, a camel loses very little of his water in the form of sweat. The less water that is available to it, the less it sweats. Third, camels do not lose great amounts of moisture when they exhale. A camel's nose has a special mucus that helps to dehydrate or take water out of much of the moist air coming up from his lungs, recirculating the water throughout his body. Rather than losing great amounts of moisture when it exhales, a camel can conserve as much as 60% of its water. A final reason that camels can go several days without water in the summertime and several months without water in the wintertime is because they can drink so much of it when it does happen to be available. A thirsty camel can drink more than 20 gallons of water in only 10 minutes. Remarkably, a camel's stomach may be empty only a few minutes after taking in such a large amount of water. How can that be? Because the camel is designed with billions of small cells that store all of the water so the camel will have it at a later time when the water is scarce, such as when he's on a journey through the desert. While most humans and animals will become sick and die when losing only 10 to 15% of their body weight in the form of water, not camels. A camel's journey in the desert may be so long and dry that he can lose 25% of his body weight in water, yet still continue on his journey. Amazingly, the camel can keep going because of its well-designed capability to use large amounts of water, as much as 40% from its uniquely designed long oval blood cells. Friends, unintelligent, undirected evolution cannot logically explain the wondrous designs of the camel. The cool, comical, water-conserving camel is an amazing creature that testifies to an awesome creator.
From extreme heat to dry, scorching winds to severe lack of water and food, any one of these factors would prove fatal for most other creatures. But as Eric has demonstrated, the camel's features are not just a fortunate response to its surrounding, that would mean death, but rather the features demonstrate God's intention to provide the camel with the mechanisms to survive. But let's leave these hot, dry climates and find somewhere a bit more shady and temperate. In forests across the globe, we find representatives of the small group of mammals called squirrels. Likely familiar to many of you, squirrels can be found in many habitats, even living comfortably in our cities. They may even be common enough to you as to be overlooked, but they are remarkable creatures. Let's let Eric highlight just a few of the various talents and skills of these wonders of creation.
Squirrels are categorized by scientists in the Sciuridae family under the order of Rodentia. That's right, squirrels are actually classified as a type of rodent. More than 250 varieties of squirrels are considered part of the Sciuridae family, including ground squirrels, tree squirrels, and flying squirrels. Can flying squirrels really fly? No, not like birds and bats can. Flying squirrels glide. Boy, do they glide. They come with their own wingsuits that they use to glide from limb to limb and tree to tree. At times, they look like they're floating. Flying squirrels have a soft fold of skin called patagium, which connects and stretches from their wrist to their ankles on both sides of their body. This perfectly designed furry membrane allows flying squirrels like the red giant squirrel of Asia to glide up to 500 feet, nearly 2 football fields. Some say they've seen these wonders of God's creation glide even farther. For thousands of years, people have wanted to fly. We've looked to the natural world around us, especially birds, for inspiration and have built all sorts of flying machines, from airplanes to powered parachutes. Some have become even more daring in recent years and made expensive wingsuits to glide hundreds or thousands of feet in the air. And what was their inspiration for these well-designed gliding suits? No doubt, one of their favorite, superbly designed creatures to imitate has been the flying squirrel. Interestingly and sadly, many human beings have made daring wingsuit flights and have suffered major injuries and even death upon landing. Yet flying squirrels are so well designed that they can make such flights many thousands of times throughout their lives and land without ever suffering major injury. How could anyone logically conclude that perfectly designed gliding squirrels are the result of evolutionary time and chance, while the man-made copies are the result of highly intelligent designers? Such reasoning is quite illogical. Just because most squirrels are not flying squirrels with a parachute-like patagium doesn't mean that they're any less well designed. Ground and tree squirrels are quite amazing creatures in their own right. You've heard the comparative phrase, as quick as a cat. Perhaps a better phrase would be as quick or swift as a squirrel. Their quickness and reflex abilities are astonishing. They seem to be able to turn on a dime as they are scampering full speed. One split second, they're running in one direction, then a nanosecond later, they have turned in the complete opposite direction. Many times you will see squirrels zigzagging at superhero-type speeds in order to escape predators. Imagine if you could have a squirrel on your football or basketball team. In addition to their quickness, consider the acrobat balance and nimbleness and coordination of these cute little creatures. Human acrobats train thousands of hours for years to be able to walk a tightrope or to swing confidently from a trapeze to a trapeze while 50 feet in the air. Yet squirrels have these abilities and many more from the time they leave their mother's nest at about 10 to 12 weeks old. With their perfectly designed feet and claws, tree squirrels can zoom up and down tree trunks at a 90-degree angle without fear of falling. They can go round and round the trunk at super speeds. Imagine how dizzy that would make us. Even non-flying squirrels can jump from branch to branch, even flimsy branches, and from tree to tree with seemingly little concern for the 30 or 40 feet below them. Tree squirrels' balance and agility are truly mesmerizing. People have even set up obstacle courses for squirrels just to witness how crafty and coordinated these creatures really are. Last but not least, you've seen or at least heard of how squirrels gather nuts and store them to eat at a later time, especially in the winter when food is scarcer. Some of these nuts are carried back to the squirrel's nest or den. However, many thousands of them are hidden in thousands of different places in the ground over a few square acres. A squirrel's survival is dependent upon being able to find literally thousands of hidden nuts. Scientists have studied squirrels and concluded that they're able to uncover several thousand nuts that they had previously hidden months earlier. Some have estimated that a squirrel's recovery rate is as high as 80%, and the other 20% is likely not because they simply forgot their whereabouts, but due to other legitimate factors. Perhaps it didn't need them or was waiting to retrieve them at a later date, or maybe other squirrels found them and ate them. Imagine being able to hide 10,000 objects in the ground and being able to uncover as many as 8,000 a few months later. How many times have you purposefully hidden just one object and yet only a few days later forgot where you hid it? As someone who often wonders where his keys are, even sometimes when I may be holding them in my hand, I don't want my life dependent on being able to find thousands of hidden meals for my survival. Squirrels may be common animals that we often overlook, but they are amazing animals. Still, as remarkable as these creatures are, let's be sure to remember that their creator is the real remarkable one. He's the grand designer of squirrels, which, like all complex, functional living things, testify to the greatness of their wonderful creator and sustainer of life.
Now, while we may apply the term flying to a few mammals like the flying squirrel, really there is only one mammal capable of true flight, and that's the bat. You might think of bats as creepy creatures, hanging upside down, living in caves, primarily coming out at night. But bats really aren't that creepy. And not only do they provide an example of mammal diversity, but also some pretty interesting benefits to us. Let's give our attention to Eric as he takes a deeper look into what makes bats so special.
Millions of people around the world get a kick out of watching a soccer player stop on a dime and turn in the other direction with the ball. We love to watch a basketball or football player make a cut so quickly that it leaves the defender falling to the ground. An acrobat who can twirl one way and then another in a fraction of a second leaves us spellbound. As impressive as these feats are, the airborne maneuvers of bats make the greatest athletes in the world look average at best. Bats are quite unique, being the only flying mammals on Earth. Depending on the species, many bats look like rodents with wings, really cool wings. A bat's arms and long bony fingers are covered with a thin membrane made of muscles. Their hands are built into their wings. How cool is that? Whereas the wings of birds are rather stiff, bats can easily and quickly change the shape of their wings simply by moving their flexible fingers. Bats' bendable wings are remarkably designed, allowing for what two evolutionary scientists admit are complex movements of each wing stroke in overall flight speed, body position, and angle of attack. Evolutionists who have carefully studied bat flight for years admit that bat wings are highly articulated with more than 24 independent joints and a thin, flexible membrane covering them. Birds and insects can fold and rotate their wings during flight, but bats have many more options. Their flexible skin can catch the air and generate lift or reduce drag in many different ways. The wing's extraordinary flexibility also allows the animals to make 180-degree turns in a distance of less than half a wingspan. Bats need to be highly agile in the air since most of them, about 70%, feed upon flying insects, including pesky mosquitoes. For bats to pluck tiny mosquitoes from thin air, they need to be able to dash one way and then another in the blink of an eye. And as you probably know, bats sleep upside down, often hanging from the high ceilings in caves. How does a bat go from flying right side up to an upside down stationary position in only a fraction of a second? They literally flip themselves in mid-flight like a talented acrobat and quickly attach their bottom claws to the rocky cave ceiling. One bat enthusiast described this flight to perch position as performing a high dive backwards, as in reversing the whole process. Amazing. Perhaps most impressive about bats, especially the category of bats that scientists call microbats, is that they navigate through the air and hunt their prey at night using their superb auditory system. But they don't merely listen for their prey. They use an extraordinary built-in guidance system called biosonar, or more commonly, echolocation. Microbats are nocturnal, sleeping during the day and hunting at night. Though bats have good eyesight, seeing in complete darkness, such as in caves, is quite difficult, or just plain impossible. Thus, microbats rely heavily on their built-in amazing echolocation abilities, which allow them to map out their surroundings in their brains by the echoes they hear. These bats navigate through the darkness and locate things, even flying insects, by making high-pitched sound waves beyond human ability to hear that travel away from the bat, which then hit something, whether a wall, an insect, or a piece of fruit, and then bounce back to the bat. The bat then uses its perfectly designed ears, often big ears, to hear even the faintest of echoes. By the way, bats do make various sounds that people can hear, such as when they're frustrated or excited, but the ultrasonic sounds bats make to echolocate things are too high of a pitch or frequency for humans to hear. Depending on the echo, a bat can determine all sorts of things in only a fraction of a second. It can accurately detect the size, shape, and even texture of objects. A bat's ears, the ultrasonic sounds it makes, and its echo-sensing abilities are so well designed and effective that a bat can determine how far away something is, if that something is moving, and if so, what direction it's going. Microbats can use echolocation to detect and eat insects as small and light as gnats, plucking them right out of the air. They can detect, seize, and eat literally thousands of tiny insects every night. So who should we thank for these high-flying acrobats with built-in biosonar capabilities? Who gets the credit for designing an animal that helps humans greatly with pest control, as well as pollinating hundreds of different species of plants, many of which produce the fruit we eat, including bananas, avocados, and mangoes? In short, where did bats come from? Though atheistic evolutionists claim that bats evolved from flightless mammals tens of millions of years ago, they admit that the fossil record has no record of bat evolution. In fact, bats just appear in the fossil record as bats. One evolutionist wrote several years ago, "For use in understanding the evolution of vertebrate flight, the early record of bats is disappointing. their most primitive or earliest representatives are fully transformed as capable flyers. Another evolutionist wrote, "The evolution of bats is a mystery because at one time there are no bats, and then all of a sudden bat fossils can be discovered all over the world." He went on to say, "No transitional protobat that was halfway between a land creature and a flying creature has been discovered." Not only is there no trace of bat evolution in the fossil record, the complex functional design of the bat logically demands an intelligent designer. How could an animal as remarkable as the bat come into being without a brilliant engineer? If there was no intelligent designer to give the first bat its jaw-dropping, fully functional flying skills, its ultrasonic sound-making abilities, its ultra-sensitive auditory system, and its overall navigating abilities, then how did the first bat ever get all of these complex functional skills? Did accidental evolution miraculously bring about bats and their brilliant abilities without a miracle worker? In truth, a bat's intricate design begs for a brilliant designer.
If you've ever tried to swat a mosquito buzzing around your ear, or catch a butterfly as it flies between flowers, then you can appreciate just how incredible a bat's flying and darting and maneuvering really is. And as one of the largest predators for nighttime insects, bats play an important role in many ecosystems. The Mexican free-tail bat that lives in the southwestern United States can eat almost its entire body weight in insects every night. Now that's a design that I can really appreciate. Now, as outstanding as these little acrobats are, our last mammal to consider is a truly amazing yet truly bizarre animal. The platypus is one of a small order of mammals called monotremes, and it seems to break biology's modern classification system with so many different and unique characteristics. However, when you acknowledge that every animal bears their specific traits, not by accident or chance, but as a design for their role in nature, then the platypus's uniqueness becomes its strength in declaring that nature has a God-intended design. Let's take a closer look at this wonder of creation.
Scientists classify the platypus as a mammal, but it's unlike any other mammal you've ever seen. It's about the size of a house cat with fur thicker than that of a polar bear's. It can store food in its mouth like a chipmunk. It has a beaver-like tail and webbed feet like an otter. It has a bill like a duck and spurs like a rooster. What's more, it lays eggs like a turtle and produces venom like a snake. It does feed its young milk, but not in the normal way. Milk seeps out of pores in its skin like sweat when the female wants to feed its young. If there were ever an animal to call unique, it would be the platypus. This animal has a perfectly designed beaver-like tail, which it uses both to store fat and to maneuver easily in water. Its fur is so dense, with hundreds of hairs per square millimeter, that it can trap a layer of air next to its skin, which works as insulation to keep the platypus warm in cold waters. Platypuses also have wonderfully designed webbed feet, which work very well both in water and on land. They can flatten their roll-away webbing beyond their claws in order to maximize their movements in water. Then, when they need to walk or run on land or burrow in the riverbank, they can quickly roll back their webbing under their claws. The name platypus, in fact, comes from two Greek words, platy and pus, which, when put together, mean broad foot or flat foot, referring to the animal's amazing webbed feet. Surely most impressive is the fact that the platypus completely closes its eyes and ears underwater when it's searching for food, and yet it finds its prey very effectively. Rather than clumsily tumbling bill first into the bottoms of rivers and streams in hopes of stumbling upon lunch, this curious creature has an extremely sensitive snout. Scientists have learned that the platypus's leathery bill has a complex electroreceptor system in it, which allows the platypus to sense even the very weak electric impulses in the muscles of its prey, including earthworms and tadpoles, which often are hiding under the mud and rocks. The more we learn about the platypus, the more we're amazed by this curious creature. Although evolutionists would have us believe that this unique, anatomically and physiologically diverse animal is the product of millions of years of evolution, why not ask yourself if the design and diversity of the duck-billed platypus actually declares the existence of a grand designer?
So the platypus has a snout that looks like a duck, webbed feet like a water bird, tail like a beaver, thick fur like an Arctic creature, and electroreceptors like an underwater sea creature. But like Eric said, while some people think the platypus is a random collection of evolutionary byproducts pieced together from a bunch of different creatures, why is it that all of the features work together so well? A duck-like bill with electroreceptors, webbed feet with a thick water-going fur coat, webbed feet that also adjust for better movement on land. These features are not randomly collected together. Rather, they were designed so that the platypus has what is needed to fit its environment. Now, I hope you've enjoyed trekking across the deserts, gliding from tree to tree, hanging out in caves, and even going to the land down under. Because now it's time to see what you remember about these amazing mammals. The first mammal we discussed in class was the camel. So my question to you is, what amazing design feature in the camel's nose helps it conserve moisture? If you said mucus, then you're correct. In their noses, camels have a special mucus that's able to capture the moisture from the air it's breathing out and allow it to absorb back into the camel's body. That's very helpful. All right, our second mammal today was the squirrel. These creatures always seem to be busy collecting and hiding nuts, with each squirrel capable of hiding thousands of nuts. Question 2, what have scientists estimated for a squirrel's nut recovery rate? Is it 25%, 50%, or 80% of nuts recovered? Here's a hint. Since squirrels can be found across the globe, they must be pretty good at what they do. The answer is that scientists estimate a squirrel recovers 80% of the nuts that it hides. That is a great memory. Okay, now for your memory, if you remember, our third mammal was the bat, the only true flying mammal. And since they mostly fly and hunt at night, what is a bat's special sense of navigation called? All right, there's two possibilities. If you said echolocation or biosonar, then you're right. Using a frequency that humans can't hear, bats navigate, hunting mainly insects and listening to the sound waves that bounce back to them. All right, the last mammal that we discussed was the platypus. Similar to how the bat uses its senses in special ways, the platypus closes its eyes and nose when it submerges. So here's my question. How does the platypus find its prey underwater if its eyes are closed? The answer? Electroreceptors in its bill. These special organs sense the electric field disturbances of other creatures, especially small shrimp and tadpoles and worms that it likes to eat. All right, our fifth and final question applies to all the mammals that we discussed in class. Evolution claims that each animal's features are the result of random genetic mutations that coincidentally helped the creature. But in each example we discussed today, there were multiple characteristics that worked together for the creature to hunt, move, fly, and survive. So question number 5, what would happen to an animal if it only had half of its specific abilities? Well, it couldn't function the same. It probably wouldn't survive. If a bat had big ears, but no way to emit high frequencies, then it couldn't use echolocation. If a squirrel gathered nuts for winter, but it didn't have the memory to recover any of them, then it wouldn't survive. If a camel's body couldn't store water in cells and recover moisture from its breath, it couldn't survive the harsh deserts. And what about that platypus with a bill like a duck and But if it had no webbed feet or thick fur, then it couldn't survive in its environment. I think you can recognize that the wonders of creation we observe are not wonderful because they accidentally mutated that way. And humans didn't decide to create them with these wonderful abilities. It is all part of God's design that we get to explore and discover. So thank you for being part of our class today and exploring more about mammals. We encourage you to be ready for our next class as we continue examining the wonders of creation.